cities swallowed up by nature, villages that lost their life overnight, silent castles, empty stations, and landscapes so dangerous that humans had to retreat. Some of these places are too beautiful to be empty. Others carry heavy histories. And there are those that may haunt you even after the video ends. Today, Bello Mundo takes you to 15 historic, natural, and impressive destinations that have been, or are being, consumed by time, tragedy, or even their own popularity. Number 1. Fordlandia, Brazil. The Amazon needs no introduction. It is the largest rainforest in the world, home to thousands of species, covering an area that spans 9 countries and is one of the most important ecosystems on the planet. What few people realize is that in one part of this Brazilian forest, there is a place called Fordlandia. The name reminds us of Ford because it belonged to Ford. This city came into being when Henry Ford, the American automotive magnate and founder of the brand that everyone knows, decided to create a model city in the middle of the forest. The intention was to produce rubber to supply his car factory without depending on Asian producers. But nothing turned out as he expected. Ford tried to bring over rules, customs, and even a lifestyle typical of the United States. Brazilian workers were forced to follow strict schedules, behavior standards, and a menu that no one accepted. The situation became so unsustainable that there was a widespread revolt. For many, it was at that moment that the reputation arose that this place was not destined to prosper. And as if that weren't enough, nature also played a part in the story. The rubber trees planted en masse could not withstand local pests. Production collapsed. The project fell apart. The money ran out before the city was ready. Today, Fordlandia is a collection of empty buildings, rusty structures, and streets overgrown with weeds. A beautiful, strange, and silent place that seems to bear the mark of a destiny that never belonged to it. Number 2. Kolmanskop, Namibia. Continuing our journey, we now arrive in Namibia to visit Kolmanskop. This place looks like a mirage lost in the desert. The city was built in the early 20th century after a worker found a diamond on the ground, shining as if it had been left there on purpose. The discovery spread so quickly that in a short time, the desert gained elegant houses, a hospital, a school, a casino, and even an ice factory. For a remote part of Africa, it was almost impossible to believe. But the wealth evaporated as quickly as it had appeared. The mines began to empty, diamonds became rare, and companies left. The population followed suit, and the town was practically empty overnight. That's when the desert decided to take control. Sand began to enter through the doors, climb the stairs, and swallow entire rooms as if it were alive. Today, hallways have become sand tunnels, and rooms are buried up to chest height. Number 3. Centralia, United States. Leaving the African desert behind, our journey crosses the ocean to the United States, where there is a place that looks like something out of a horror movie, and it's no coincidence. In fact, this place served as inspiration for Silent Hill, one of the most famous franchises of its kind. Silent Hill was created by Konami, a Japanese developer known worldwide for its horror and action games. Although they have never officially confirmed the reference, anyone who has played the game or watched the 2006 movie immediately recognizes the similarities. In the story, the city is isolated by an underground fire, covered in toxic smoke, and marked by abandonment. Just like Centralia in real life, the city has been living for decades on a fire that no one can extinguish. The story began in the 60s, when a fire in a landfill reached the entrance to a coal mine. The flames descended into the tunnels and spread for miles, turning the city's underground into a huge, invisible furnace. Over time, the ground began to crack and release hot clouds that rose as if the earth were breathing. The residents called it the city's sigh. In some places, the asphalt suddenly sinks and steaming holes open up in the middle of the streets. As you might expect, life there is no longer possible. Families left, businesses closed, and Centralia became almost a ghost town. Number 4. Oradour-sur-Glane, France. Now we cross the Atlantic and arrive in Europe to visit a village called Oradour-sur-Glane, which means above the Glane River. For those who don't know, the Glane is a narrow river that cuts through the rural region of central France, passing through small communities and flowing into the Vienne River, one of the most important rivers in the region. The name may sound poetic at first glance, but the history of this place is anything but lighthearted. Oradour was the scene of one of the greatest atrocities committed by German troops during World War II. In 1944, soldiers surrounded the village, gathered the residents, and in a few hours took the lives of more than 600 people. Most of them were women and children. After that, the French government made a symbolic decision not to rebuild anything there. The houses, shops, school, and all the buildings in the village remain exactly where they were on the day of the attack. The clock stopped at the same time, and time was deliberately frozen there. Today, visitors to Oradour find silent streets, corroded structures, and rusty objects that seem to be waiting for someone who will never return. Number 5. Villa Epecuen, Argentina. Continuing our journey, we now head to the American continent, specifically to the south, to Argentina, to visit one of the most impressive places in the video. We are talking about Villa Epecuen, an old resort on the shores of an extremely salty lake that welcomed thousands of tourists in search of therapeutic baths and peaceful days during the 50s and 60s. It was a popular and vibrant destination. But everything changed in the late 70s when heavy rains caused the lake level to rise uncontrollably. In 1985, the water broke through a dam and flooded the entire city. The residents had to abandon everything, and Epecuen spent 25 years submerged. When the lake began to recede, the ruins resurfaced. Cars, streets, and walls reappeared covered in a white crust of salt. The scene looks like a sculpture frozen in time. For many years, a single man returned to live there. He lived alone among the rubble and ruins, cycling along sidewalks that no longer led anywhere. When he died in 2021, the city became completely uninhabited again. Today, it is an open-air salt cemetery. Number 6. Salton City, United States. And speaking of salt, we remain on the American continent, now heading to the state of California to visit Salton City. Before becoming a post-apocalyptic setting, this place was once a real estate dream in the 50s. Salton Sea attracted tourists from all over the country, and for a brief moment became a meeting place for celebrities. Frank Sinatra used to visit the region. Marilyn Monroe passed through there. Professional golfers and Hollywood stars appeared frequently. The region grew at a rapid pace. Clubs, hotels, marinas, restaurants, and planned neighborhoods sprang up with the promise that a new Palm Springs would be born there. For a while, everything indicated that the dream would come true, but all it took was for the lake to change, for everything to start falling apart. The Salton Sea has no natural outlet and received runoff full of fertilizers from farms. The water became increasingly toxic. Fish began to die en masse and the smell spread for miles. On windy days, thousands of dried scales rose from the ground, creating the impression that it was raining dead fish. When the lake lost its life, the city lost its people. Tourists disappeared, businesses closed, and Salton City was left with empty streets, abandoned houses, and structures corroded by time. Number 7. Poveglia Island, Italy. Italy is known for its historic cities, famous landscapes, and dozens of islands that delight any traveler. But there is one in particular that stands out for a very different reason. We are talking about Poveglia, a small piece of land in the Venice Lagoon that, at first glance, could be just another beautiful part of the landscape. But you only need to learn about its history to understand why so many people avoid going there. For centuries, this place was used as a quarantine station for people infected with serious diseases, especially during outbreaks of the plague. Boats arrived carrying the sick, and the island became synonymous with suffering and isolation. It is said that the island's soil is so impregnated with human ashes that part of the land is mixed with the cremated remains of thousands of victims. In the 19th century, the island took on another function. It became the headquarters of a psychiatric hospital that became famous for reports of mistreatment and controversial methods. The stories that circulate mix facts, exaggerations, and legends, but they all help to build the heavy aura that surrounds the place to this day. With the closure of the hospital, no one wanted to occupy the island anymore. It was taken over by weeds and abandonment. The Italian government even tried to sell it, but found no interested buyers. Today, Poveglia is seen as one of the most avoided places in Italy. A beautiful island from a distance, but burdened with a past that few have the courage to face up close. Number 8. Village of Igatu, Bahia, Brazil. Now we head to Brazil, more precisely to the state of Bahia, home to one of the most beautiful and famous natural regions in the country. We are talking about Chapada Diamantina, an area known for its flat-topped mountains, crystal-clear rivers, challenging trails, and ancient gold mining routes that mark the history of the Bahian interior. It is within this region that we find Igatu, a village that many people call the Brazilian Machu Picchu. What makes Igatu so impressive is not only the surrounding landscape, it is the stone ruins scattered throughout the village, reminders of a time when the diamond cycle attracted thousands of people there. But when diamonds began to become scarce, life changed overnight. The economy collapsed and the village was quickly emptied. Many houses were abandoned, others were destroyed by the miners themselves, who believed they could still find diamonds hidden in the stone walls. Today, part of Igatu looks like an open-air ghost town. The ruins coexist with a few restored houses, small shops, and trails that attract the most curious visitors. It is a quiet, beautiful place, haunted by a wealth that never returned. Number 9. Wittenoom, Australia. Now we cross the planet to reach Australia, a country known for its vast deserts, modern cities, and nature that ranges from paradise to extreme in just a few miles. It is there, in the state of Western Australia, that we find one of the most dangerous and avoided places on the entire continent. Little remains of this former settlement. A few empty streets, house foundations, and structures swallowed by the red dust of the outback. But what really haunts this place is not the visible abandonment. It is what remains in the air, literally. The town was founded in the 1940s because of the mining of blue asbestos, a highly toxic type of fiber. At the time, almost no one understood the risk. Workers handled tons of dust every day, and residents lived surrounded by mountains of waste. Decades later, the consequences came. Hundreds of people fell ill and died from exposure. Over time, the government banned anyone from staying in the area, withdrew public services, and even erased the city's name from official maps. Warning signs alert visitors that entering the area can cause fatal diseases, even many years after their visit. Some signs have already disappeared, blown away by the wind or rusted away, which makes everything even more unsettling. We even made a video here on the channel talking about this place. So after this video, be sure to check out the video The Mystery of the Australian City That Killed All Its Inhabitants. To make your life easier, the link will be in the description. But I'll tell you one thing in advance. You'll need a strong stomach for what you're about to see. Number 10. Spinalonga, Greece. Greece is known for its paradisiacal beaches, ancient ruins, and islands that seem to have stopped in time. But among so many beauties of the Mediterranean, there is a small island that carries a heavy and often forgotten history. We are talking about Spinalonga, a piece of land surrounded by the blue waters off the coast of Crete. And although the landscape looks like something out of a postcard, for a long time this place was feared and avoided. In the early 20th century, Spinalonga became a leper colony. People diagnosed with leprosy were forcibly taken there, removed from society, and forced to live in isolation until the end of their lives. The island had a hospital, school, houses, and church, all functioning separately from the world. Many people spent decades without seeing their own families. Over time, this place became practically a forgotten city. The last inhabitant left in 1957, and since then, the island has been deserted. Today, Spinalonga welcomes visitors who are curious to understand a little more about this history that mixes prejudice, isolation, and the struggle for humanity. Number 11. Bodie, United States. The United States has dozens of cities that sprang up overnight during the gold rush, but few carry as much mystery as Bodie, an old mining town hidden in the mountains of California. At the end of the 19th century, this place had thousands of inhabitants. There were saloons, hotels, churches, newspapers, and an absurd amount of trouble worthy of the Old West. They say the town was so violent that a local pastor even wrote that Bodie was a place where a man was afraid to sleep. When the gold began to run out, its fate was sealed. Residents left, stores closed, and Bodie was swallowed up by the cold desert wind. But what really caught the world's attention was not the abandonment itself. It was the legend that came after. Visitors began to report a supposed curse. According to them, anyone who takes an object from the town, even a small piece of wood or a stone, will suffer a string of bad luck. The number of letters sent to the local museum asking for forgiveness and the return of the objects increased so much that it became an official part of the town's folklore. Today, Bodie has been transformed into a historic park. The houses are preserved just as they were left, in a state that Americans themselves call frozen decay. It is as if time had stopped at the exact moment the residents closed the door and never returned. Number 12. Craco, Italy. Now we return to Italy to visit Craco, a city that balances on top of a cliff in the Basilicata region in the south of the country. At first glance, Craco looks like just a forgotten medieval village, but behind the ruins lies a history that almost no one knows about. It emerged in the Middle Ages and prospered for centuries, with its stone houses, churches, and a typical Italian countryside look. But the ground there was unstable, very unstable, and the town literally slid down the mountain. In the 60s, the landslides began. The ground cracked, stairs collapsed, walls sank. Many people resisted, but there was no way around it. Over time, the city became a hazard. Entire families abandoned their homes. Some were not even able to take everything with them. Craco was gradually emptied until it became what it is today, an urban skeleton with empty windows facing the horizon. Number 13. Hotel del Salto, Colombia. At the end of our journey, we headed to Colombia. One of the most impressive abandoned buildings in South America is located on the outskirts of Bogotá. We are talking about the Hotel del Salto, a building that seems to hang on the edge of a cliff facing one of the loudest waterfalls on the continent, the Salto del Tequendama. The hotel was built in the early 20th century and quickly gained fame. The constant mist rising from the waterfall envelops everything and gives the building an almost supernatural appearance. It didn't take long for heavy folklore to arise around the place. Guests who disappeared without explanation. People who were reportedly seen walking in the fog and never returned. The stories spread and the building ended up being nicknamed the Devil's Throat Hotel. Over time, tourism declined and the increasingly polluted Bogotá River drove away any visitors. The hotel was gradually emptied until it was abandoned. In 2014, the building was restored and became home to the Salto del Tequendama House and Museum, a space dedicated to the region's biodiversity. The facade and original structure were preserved, as was the building's reputation for harboring stories that have never been fully explained. Number 14. Hashima Island, Japan. To end our journey, we arrive in Japan, more precisely on the coast of Nagasaki. This is where Hashima Island is located, one of the most impressive abandoned places on the planet. Seen from a distance, it looks like a concrete warship, but it is actually an entire city built on a rock in the middle of the ocean. Hashima's history is marked by a very rapid rise and fall. It all started in 1887, when miners discovered coal in the region. From then on, the island gained the interest of Mitsubishi. Yes, the same Mitsubishi that made televisions, VCRs, and various other electronics that marked the 80s and 90s. It was Mitsubishi that built the multi-story buildings, schools, stairways, and cramped dwellings that transformed Hashima into a compact and overpopulated city. But not everything was progress. During World War II, forced laborers were sent to the underground mines in conditions so harsh that the island earned the nickname Hell Island. The combination of overcrowding, extreme heat, and constant danger was part of everyday life for those who lived there. When coal lost its strength in the world market, the decline was immediate. In 1974, Hashima was completely evacuated. The doors were closed and no one returned for 35 years. The wind, salt, and abandonment took over everything. Access was only granted again in 2009 when it became the setting for films, including a sequence from the James Bond movie Skyfall, and it recently became a UNESCO World Heritage Site. So, which of these places impressed you the most? Tell us here in the comments. If you liked the video, leave a like, subscribe to Bello Mundo, and activate the bell so you don't miss the next trips. Thank you for staying with us until the end. See you on the next adventure.